Today on TOKKANTE, let's talk about Watches and Wonders 2022, shall we? I'm recording this on the 3rd of April, so the show is actually not finished. There are 2 more days, and there are so many new releases that I just can't talk about everything in one video. But I think it's turning out to be the year of the GMT, so let's just focus on that first. I'll go over 4 GMTs that piqued my attention from Montblanc, from Parmigiani, from Tudor, and of course from Rolex. Plus, I'll give you my 2 favorite releases from Rolex, 2 hidden gems I think that are not the ones you think. The first one is from Montblanc, and it's the Montblanc 1858 GMT. So I've talked about Montblanc before, and on one hand you have their Minerva collection with their now in-house movements from Minerva, and on the other hand you have the 1858 collection with the mostly third-party movements from Sellita. So this one is from the 1858 collection. It's using a Sellita movement to display the GMT function in a very innovative manner. So it's a fixed bezel, so it's only a 2 time zone and not 3. But the 24-hour GMT function is displayed with those kind of squarish blocks that go around the dial, the 24-hour dial, and that are very reminiscent of how it's displayed on a Sky Dweller, for example, or Nomos TOKKANTE Pneumatic Update. So I know those are not GMT, but I thought this is a very innovative way to display the GMT time that I've never seen somewhere else. And on top of being able to display the 24 hours of the GMT, you can also display the time in half hour, which is quite cool. There are no indications of price yet, but since the 1858 diver that they've just released is going to be priced at around 3,000, I'm assuming this one is going to be maybe around 3,500 US dollars. Quite interesting. For the second one, we're going way up in price at 26,000 Swiss francs with the Parmigiani PF Tonda GMT. Now, Parmigiani has been gaining a lot of attention lately, and I like this one because it's a very innovative way, again, to display what they call a GMT with the first use of a rattrapante function for the GMT. So the way it works is that you have 2 hands. One is rose gold, and that's the GMT home time. And then the other hour hand is the rhodium-plated white gold, and this one is for your local time. And there's a push at 8 o'clock, and then when you push that, basically you make the local time advance by 1 hour increment, maybe when you're traveling. And then when you want to go back home, then there is a mono pusher hidden in the crown. You push that, and then your local hour will catch up with your GMT home time hand, and those will be hidden by using the rattrapante function. Now, what I'm not so sure about, and they were kind of not so clear about that, is whether the home time, what they call the GMT hand, goes around the dial in 24 hours or every 12 hours. Because as you know from my previous video, if it goes around 12 hours, then it's a dual time, it's not a GMT. If it's really a GMT, then it should go around every 24 hours, which means that the local hour time will not always be on top of the GMT time. So some details, to figure out later. But I think the mechanical aspect of it using the rattrapante is very interesting. Now let's talk about Tudor. I think Tudor is becoming one of the most exciting, approachable brands, and they do stuff that people want to see. And this year they've come out with the Black Bay Pro. So, 39mm GMT, everybody was expecting a Black Bay 58 with a GMT function, and, there were talks going around whether that was actually possible and, at what thickness, etc. So we didn't really get the Black Bay 58 with a GMT, but the Black Bay Pro is probably the closest thing that we're going to get to it for a while. And I really want to like this, of course, very reminiscent of the, vintage Rolex 1655, heavily inspired from it, I will say. I really want to like it. The only issue with me is that it's 14.6mm. So I would hope that they've done a few things to kind of hide that height, especially from, the side, not to have like this huge, flank on the side. I think they did some beveling, and from some videos that I've seen, maybe they've tried to hide it quite well. If it works, I think if it works well on the wrist, I have to say I'm also very interested in this one. I think everybody loves it. This is like the hero of Watches and Wonder, I think, for the sub 5,000 segment. Now, where I was a little disappointed with Tudor is that I wanted to see also a new design. Again, it's a lot of vintage inspired kind of things with the root beer as well. I like the root beer, but to me it's a little bit too new, vintage inspired, but at the same time looks kind of new. I think if you want to go root beer, either you go modern root beer with the Rolex BLRO, or you go vintage root beer with a vintage Rolex root beer. but this would be a version with Tudor, not really for me. What I was looking for is a new design. You know, I was expecting maybe a new update on the Pelagos, maybe a smaller Pelagos, not the FX, but you know, an update on the Pelagos. I think Tudor also needs to not forget new designs and not just rely on vintage inspired designs. But overall, really looking forward to the Black Bay Pro. And finally, Rolex with the GMT Master II, the lefty. So, you know, I don't dislike this one. I know there have been a lot of hate online and a lot of memes going around and people hating on it, even though in about a month they'll probably turn around and then Rolex will say every single unit they make of it anyway. But what I feel is strange is maybe the placement of the date. I think Zinn, for example, or Tudor make a better left-hand drive. And I thought about it, and I think that's because the date is still on the right. And those are left-hand drive watches that have been designed for actually right-handed people who will still wear it on their left wrist. So even though the crown is on the left, but the date is still on the right. And that seems, you know, right for most right-handed people. What Rolex has done here is an actual left-hand drive watch, maybe for real left-handed people who would wear it on their right wrist. So the crown and the date being on the left side of it maybe makes sense for left-handed people, but it does look a bit strange for right-handed people because then the date will always be hidden maybe by your shirt, for example, your shirt cuff. So that's why I think a lot of people kind of feel it looks weird. One thing to note also on the GMT Master II is that it is now adjusted in 7 positions. Not many people talk about it, but that's something interesting. You know, Rolex watches are adjusted in 6 positions, and because this one is meant to be worn on the right wrist, they had to adjust it also in a 7th position at 45-degree angle. So that's you know, if you're crazy about accuracy, then you can say this one is adjusted in 7 positions. I mean, even higher horology pieces are not adjusted in 7 positions, usually 6. And finally, my favorite release is from Rolex this year. And no, it's not the GMT Master II, and it's not even the Air King, which, by the way, I think looks better than the previous model. But no, one is actually the Falcon's Eye Yachtmaster 42. That was released without anyone talking about it almost at all. And if you go to the website, you'll see that there is a new dial option, and it's a stone dial, and it's called the Falcon's Eye. And it's a little bit like the tiger's eye, but where the tiger's eye is brown and gold, the falcon's eye is kind of a bluish gray stone dial, which I think looks amazing. And yes, I know a stone dial on a sports watch is a little bit strange, but it's been done before. They had a meteorite dial on GMT Master II, and I think Rolex does the best stone dial in the business. And I really, really like that Falcon's Eye dial for the Yachtmaster. I mean, especially in white gold with that black ceramic bezel, if I could afford it, that would be my Rolex of choice for sports Rolex this year. And then the other one is actually the green lacquer Day-Date 40. I think this one is a classic. I mean, I loved before the Ever Rose Gold Day-Date 40 with a green dial, the anniversary edition. But I think this one, even though they don't say it, I think it's made of lacquer. It has a much richer and kind of creamier green. It's yellow gold, so you have to be very confident to be able to wear it. But I think this one looks killer. It's amazing. If I could pull it off, I would love this model. I think those two have been released without any publicity, but those will be sleeper models for later this year. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Have you been following Watches and Wonders this year? Which models caught your eye? Next week, we'll talk about why Zinn disappointed me this year. I'll see you in the next one.